You have 72 hours to vacate the property, Mr. McMichael. That's how it started. 3 people in matching blazers on my porch staring at me like I was some squatter on my own land. Their SUV was still idling on the dirt road, a plume of dust curling behind it like smoke from a gun. The woman in front. Karen Hernandez, president of the Pinarest Valley HOA, handed me a red envelope. "You're in violation of multiple regulations," she said, lips tight. "Failure to comply will result in enforcement." I remember staring at her varnish still on my hands from restoring the porch rail. "Enforcement?" I asked. "Lady, I own this cabin." She just smiled, that kind of corporate smile that doesn't reach the eyes. "You might want to reread your deed, Mr. McMichael. This area now falls under HOA jurisdiction." Then she turned heels, clicking against the wood, and left. That was the moment I realized the year I'd spent rebuilding this cabin might have been for nothing. A year earlier, I'd been broke. My carpentry shop went under, my tools were all I had left. One night, scrolling through the county tax auction listings, I saw it. Abandoned cabin, $50 starting bid. $50. The clerk thought I was crazy, but I bought it. When I drove up that overgrown trail the first time, it looked like a lost ghost, roof-sagging, porch-rotted windows black with grime. But under the decay, the bones were perfect. Old-growth pine hand-cut joinery, not a single nail in the frame. It was craftsmanship that hadn't existed in a century. So I camped inside, fixed what I could, and worked every day with hand tools. I told myself I was rebuilding something worth saving. The initials carved into the main beam, JM 1907, became a kind of promise. Whoever JM was, he'd built something meant to last. And now, after all that, the HOA claimed they owned it. That night, I sat on the porch flipping through the violations in that red envelope. No permits, unauthorized modifications, non-compliant exterior aesthetic. All made-up jargon. Then my phone buzzed an unknown number. "You have 48 hours now. Don't be stupid." The voice was distorted male and gone before I could answer. 48 hours, not 72. Someone was watching. I walked into the tree line with my flashlight. That's when I found it a trail camera. Freshly mounted, aimed right at my door. Whoever they were, they wanted me gone fast, and they wanted proof when it happened. I started digging through county records. The property had been lost to taxes in 1983, sitting untouched until I bought it. And there was nothing. No line, no amendment tying it to any homeowners association. Pinarest Valley HOA didn't even exist until 1998. So how the hell could they claim jurisdiction? But one thing kept bothering me. When Karen stood on my porch earlier, she glanced at those carved initials JM 1907 just for a second. There'd been recognition in her face, like she knew what they meant. The next morning, I started researching those letters. JM 1907. Maybe a signature, maybe a clue. I typed it into a search engine, JM Carpenter, Colorado, 1907. After a few slow minutes on mountain Wi-Fi, an old newspaper article appeared. Swiss craftsman Jonas Mueller retires to build final home. My pulse jumped. The description matched my cabin exactly, timber framing, alpine design, hand-forged details. Mueller had been a legend. A builder for mining magnates before he disappeared into the mountains to build one last masterpiece for himself. That meant my 50-cent cabin wasn't just old, it was a historic artifact. But I also knew what that meant. If it was worth preserving, it was worth stealing. I needed legal help. That's when I found Wacha Nolan Fletcher, a retired property attorney known for taking on impossible HOA cases. I called him, explained everything. He interrupted halfway through. "Let me guess. Red envelope, 72 hours. President named Hernandez." I froze. "How did you—" "You're not the first," he said, "but maybe you'll be the last. Bring every paper you've got." When I got to his office, he spread my documents across the desk and nodded slowly. This is the same playbook. Manufactured violations, forced sale. Quick resale to a shell company. I've seen it 3 times. But your case, he tapped the photos of the initials, this one could blow it open. He told me about others who'd lost their land to the same tactic, bullied, buried in legal fees, too exhausted to fight. He leaned back and said, Claudia's got power and money, but you've got something she doesn't, history. That night I went home determined to find proof of that history. I started inspecting the cabin again, beam by beam. Between two interior panels I found a small, tin box, sealed tight. Inside were 30 hand-forged nails, each stamped JM, wrapped in cloth with a note written in German, für Ewigkeit, for eternity. I realized Jonas Müller had hidden pieces of his story in the house itself, maybe even something that could protect it. Still, the pressure mounted. Karen wasn't slowing down, she'd started rallying the community against me. On the neighborhood forum, a post appeared. Squatter occupying community land, HOA taking action. Hundreds of comments. People calling me a thief, a danger, even a freeloader. The post included a photo taken from the same angle as that trail camera. I almost packed up and left that night. I sat on the cabin floor surrounded by the smell of varnish and pine, wondering if I'd just wasted a year of my life. But then the phone rang again. Nolan. Don't you dare move, he said. They're trying to prove abandonment. That's how they seize property. Sit tight and call a woman named Morin. She's been waiting for someone like you. Morin was in her 70s, sharp as a knife, lived in the valley since the 80s. She met me at the County Historical Society. You're the one with the Müller cabin, she said, not asking, just knowing. She led me into the archives, old maps, journals, and, unbelievably, Jonas Müller's handwritten will. It was dated 1942 and crystal clear. This property shall belong only to those who preserve it with honest labor, not for profit. It shall never be incorporated into any planned community or association. Morin wasn't done. She showed me an email screenshot she'd received from a friend on the HOA board. The subject line read, Müller, Property Acquisition Strategy. It was from Karen Hernandez herself. It laid out everything. Appraisal in March, violation notices in September, forced sale by December, and resale to a developer in January for $15 million. That was the moment my fear turned into fury. Nolan looked at the documents that evening and said, We take this to the HOA meeting tonight, in public. The community center was packed. Rows of folding chairs, PowerPoint slides on the wall. Karen sat at the front, hair perfect, voice syrupy. This vote is simply to clarify boundaries for undeveloped parcels, she announced. A routine housekeeping item. Routine my ass. Nolan stood. Madam Chair, I represent the owner of one of those parcels, and I have evidence that this vote constitutes attempted fraud. Karen's expression barely flickered, but her hand tightened on the gavel. Public comment is after board business, she said. This is board business, Nolan shot back. You're voting to steal private land. He walked to the front and set down a stack of documents. Original 1906 deed. Conditional bequest, and an internal email outlining your acquisition strategy. Would you like to read the part about the developer payout? Gasps. People started whispering. Karen's smile cracked. That email was taken out of context, she stammered. Nolan projected it on the screen, her name, her words in full. Before historical designation becomes an issue. Remove documentation. Silence. Then a wave of angry voices. Board members looking at each other unsure. Finally one said, I move to table this vote indefinitely. Another seconded. The motion passed unanimously. Karen's face was pale as chalk. She gathered her papers, avoiding my eyes. For the first time, she looked scared. 2 weeks later, she tried to fight back, filed a petition in county court claiming the documents were forged. But this time, the courtroom was full of reporters. Nolan opened with one sentence. This case is about whether an HOA president can manufacture authority to steal a home worth $10 million. He laid out the original deed dated 1906, sealed by the Colorado Mountain Railway Company. He presented Müller's will, the letters, even the forged nails, as evidence of historic craftsmanship. When Karen's lawyer argued that modern regulations supersede outdated ownership, the judge leaned forward. "You're telling me a homeowners association formed 92 years later can retroactively seize private land?" The lawyer stammered. Nolan stepped in. "Your Honor, the plaintiff not only knew this land was privately owned, she tried to sell it before taking possession." He handed over the printed email. The judge read it, face darkening. "Move quickly before historical designation becomes an issue." "Ms. Hernandez, did you write this?" Karen stood, voice trembling. "That email was part of an exploratory—" "Enough," the judge cut her off. "You threatened the legal owner, falsified violations, and coordinated a fraudulent acquisition. The court rules in favor of Mr. McMichael. The property is his free and clear." The gavel slammed. "And this matter is referred to the district attorney for criminal investigation." Karen's composure collapsed. She stood frozen as the courtroom buzzed with murmurs and flashes of cameras. For once, she had no script, no clipboard, no power left to hide behind. As I stepped outside, the mountain air felt different, sharper, cleaner. Reporters were shouting questions, but all I could think about was that beam inside my cabin, the one carved J.M. 1907. For months, I'd felt like a man fighting windmills alone, small, powerless. But the truth was stronger than their fake authority. I didn't win because I shouted louder. I won because the evidence spoke for itself. Because a man who died a century ago left behind a message carved into wood. Integrity outlasts greed. And that's the lesson. No matter how much power someone claims to have, it's still just paper until you stand up and remind them who built the house in the first place.